Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, a show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And Dana White's Contender Series Week 10, the ultimate job interview. Can't believe we've had 10 weeks of Contender Series all covered on the Ground and Pound podcast. And guess who's back, ladies and gentlemen? My co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
Missed. Definitely happy that he's back, and he's here to break down the entire Week 10 Contender Series, starting off in the early prelim opener of Mario Minga taking on Wes Schultz. So I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. It feels good to say that. Who you got in this matchup?
I'm gonna take Minga. I'm going with Mario Minga in this one. Minga has you know, I think a very educated ground attack. He's pretty flexible. He's when you're trying to control him on the ground, he's always kind of just swiveling his body. He's dangerous off of his back. So Schultz, much like Minga, is going to want to get this fight to the mat too. Uh, Not a dangerous striker. I think that, Schultz, whatever threat that Minga poses on the feet, I think Schultz kind of poses too. Like neither one of them look very impressive standing, but I think Minga could be just a little bit more careless on his feet because he knows that he wants to get this to the ground, so he wants you to come after him too, kind of like baiting you. And plus I think Minga is a bit slicker on the ground out of the two. I think he can get to positions a lot smoother, a lot easier in transitions, whereas it kind of looks like Schultz. I mean, he's not bad, but it looks a little herky jerky, his movement off the ground. Like you can kind of tell where he's going, what his body wants to do. And with Minga, it kind of just flows into position. So I don't believe Schultz has the wrestling ability to kind of like just control Minga and when he gets into those positions. And I think Minga's going to find a way to probably get some slick submission off of his back. And even if he's not on his back, he's going to get, in a scramble, probably get the better position on top. And I just think that Minga's probably going to get this done.
Yeah, two for Minga here. How confident are you in Minga in this one, Carlos?
Very confident, only because I feel like if this is on ground, I feel a lot more confident. It's just when they're standing, it's a little bit of a wild card. And if one of them gets dinged and they follow him to the ground, who knows what can happen there. But I still think that in an actual grappling match, I think Minga's got the edge. So that's the only reason why I went with him.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Minga here as well. Obviously, fighting out of Cage Warriors undefeated, and he's got a very nice triangle off of his back once fights do hit the mat. Very long limbed at 6'4". Tall and lanky for the division. I worry a little bit about his striking because he does tend to leave openings when he enters the pocket. He's kind of got a little bit of tall man defense. So I don't think we have to worry too much about that here with Wes Schultz, also a grappler, more of a submission grappler, competes in grappling competitions as well. Did also fight on the Contender Series and lost to Abdul Malik, and has also lost to Dylan Budker on the regional scene as well. Dylan Budker sucks. I have a venomous hatred for that guy for no apparent reason other than he's called World Beater Hulk, and I think that's very disrespectful to Hulk. But basically, I think this fight comes down to grappler versus grappler here, and like Carlos said, the only way I really see this one going negatively for Minga is if Wes Schultz lands something on the feet and kind of gets into a dominant position because he's able to rock Minga on the feet. But I've seen in a few fights of Schultz that he has a nice 1-2 and a nice powerful straight right hand. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did catch the tall kind of rangy BJJ grappler here in Minga, who tends to leave his chin up in the air at times. But I do think that Minga off of his back is very dangerous. Wes Schultz will pull guard as well just to get fights to the mat if he can't implement his wrestling. And I think realistically this fight's going to come down to a lot of scrambles, but I do trust the grappling here of Minga a little bit more. I do think over in Cage Warriors as well, he's fought the little bit higher level competition when Wes Schultz has had those step up, not necessarily high level names in Dylan Budker, but guys that we know from the UFC. He's tend to struggle. And I just think that realistically both guys here are going to look to get this fight to the mat, but Minga's going to be able to implement grappling, whether it be from a dominant position on top or from the bottom. He's going to be able to sweep and be a threat off of his back as well. So give me Mario Minga here to get this one done. The Italian getting the contract. And next up, we have Jovan Lecker taking on Azamat Muftaliev, Carlos, who you got in this heavyweight matchup?
In this one, I went with Azamat, and this is a pretty even, evenly matched fight. I feel that Azamat also has that little bit of a wrinkle where he can actually get takedowns and he can finish on the ground, whether it's ground and pound or submission, because he does have very good balance and top position. But one of the things that gets me is like when you watch Leica and you see his fights, when he's keeping his opponent at distance, he's very dangerous. You know what I mean? Like when he's keeping you right at the end of his punch, he's keeping you at the end of his kicks, his elbows. He can do a lot of damage, and obviously being 6'5", with I'm going to say he probably is going to have the reach advantage of this one. Azamat's going to probably have to make this a little ugly to get on the inside, and if Leica could keep him outside, I think he's going to have a lot of success. Unfortunately, I feel that Azamat's going to cut the distance. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think he's just going to bull right into him, probably slip a punch or eat a punch to get in. And once he gets him down, I think that I haven't seen too much of Leica on the ground, so I don't know how he would fare with that. But I do think that once Azamat gets him down, he's probably going to be able to control him. And if he doesn't get the stoppage on the ground, he's probably just going to, you know, get the ground control time and get the decision. But Lake is a tough kid. I do think that Azamat's going to have some issues if he tries to be technical and come in past those strikes. I think his best bet is probably to just bull rush in like he normally does and just bully his guy to the ground. He does have technique when he does it, but the way that he does it is he just kind of bum rushes you. So I'm going to take Azamat in this one.
I'm happy that you started off your breakdown by saying that this one's a little bit closer because that's how I kind of thought with this one. When I saw 23 years old, heavyweight, kind of looks a little doughy. Other guys fought in the PFL, 18 fights, etc., etc. I kind of looked at it and thought, this one should be one-way traffic. And then you watch the some of the tape on Lecker, and he's actually not too bad. The guy's got some really snappy kicks, pretty impressive for a heavyweight. Spinning back kicks as well, which I thought looked pretty good. 6'5", he's a big guy. Fast hands, nice 1-2, very measured on the feet. He's really looking to set up shots on the feet. And Carlos said obviously he's not seen a whole lot of grappling. I haven't seen too much of it either, but he does do a good job of kind of showing urgency in positions. If someone tries to take him down, he does a good job of being able to scramble and have urgency to get back to his feet. I haven't seen a whole lot of him being trying to take opponents down, but to me he showed a decent level of takedown defense, and he's definitely going to need that here against Azamat. Me and Mohammed Azamat. Big fan of kind of guys that want to come in and implement ground and pound, and that's exactly what Azamat does. He's a very heavy, sort of in your face, sort of heavy pressure grappler. He wants to get you to the ground. He wants to dominate you on the ground. He wants to beat you up with ground and pound. He's not looking to play guard and do all that nonsense. He wants to literally get into a dominant position, old school style, and just be a brute. And I am a big fan of that. Obviously, it's going to be very heavy on the gas tank, which is what I do worry, especially against some bigger heavyweights that he might struggle to take down with ease. As Carlos mentioned, he can kind of brute positions at times and not necessarily use as much technique, but he has submissions in his arsenal as well. Where I kind of worry is what does Azamat look like in the later rounds if he can't get a finish on the ground, and Lecker is the more sort of dynamic, more cleaner striker. I think the level of competition is definitely night and day. All Azamat here. His one lone loss has come to Slim Tribleski. I think I'm butchering that name. A very high level wrestler in himself as well. So no shame in losing to that guy who's fought over in the PFL. And I think this fight really just comes down to I could picture Lecker kind of defending the takedowns early and having success with the striking. 23 years old as well. As long as the moment here doesn't get to him, I'm actually going to pick him. It's more of a feeling. I feel like Azamat is actually the better fighter overall in terms of his grappling and who he's fought, the higher level of competition. But that's what Contender Series is sometimes. Is you see a matchup, you see a guy you don't necessarily think is going to be too good. You watch the tape, and he's got some skills. Some of his kicks are very nice. The low calf kick's great, kick to the body. And I could just see this fight being Azamat early, having success with the takedowns, and then as the fight goes on, the takedowns become more difficult, and Lecker has his way on the feet. So give me Jovan Lecker here to get this one done in somewhat of an upset.
I actually felt pretty good in that pick too. Like if I took like I just went with Azamat because I felt like he could probably, he can probably fight in more situations, but his stand up is it's not impressive. And
Mm.
if he can't get the takedown, I think Laker could actually catch him coming in. So, I don't know. I went with Azamat, but Laker is starting to look even better right now.
But let's be real, it's also heavyweight as well. Heavyweight sometimes can be tricky. And I looked at that 6'5" to 6'1", and I'm kind of like, you know how sometimes it can be difficult to take the taller guys down, but an Azamat not necessarily being the most technical, that could definitely play a factor as well. But this is one I'm interested to see how this one plays out, to be honest. But I'm not confident in any heavyweight fight unless it's Tom Aspinall at this point. But next up, we have Michael Oliveira taking on Victor Venezuela. I'm probably butchering that last name. Carlos is probably going to do a better job. But Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
I actually went with Victor Valenzuela. Michael Oliveira, he has strong strikes, uses his reach very well. He's very patient on the feet. He's not just swinging for no reason. He's looking for the openings, looking to create some. Uh, but he can be pulled into a brawl, early in his fights. But he also has shown maybe it's lesser competition, but he's shown that he can take a shot pretty well because he's been cracked early, and his legs didn't go. You know what I mean? Like he didn't take a step back. So maybe he's got that bullish attitude and he wants to come forward, and that's all he knows. But he has decent takedown defense, looks to keep the fight standing, but Valenzuela can hit too. So we're going to see if he can actually take a shot from somebody that can give a shot. And uh, I just think that Valenzuela is starting to hit his stride from when you look at his record and then you look at his fights in that record on, he's starting to get a little bit better. And there was a huge period where he didn't fight. And then afterward, he just started getting on a little bit of a tear after a loss when he first came back, obviously. But he's looking pretty good. And it's not like he's doing anything different. It's just sometimes the everything falls into place and and it's just coming up, for you. And right now it's coming up Valenzuela. So I went with him for that. It looks like he's on a bit of a roll. And I know Oliveira is 8-0, but he's 27. Hasn't faced too much adversity. And sometimes when guys come back from a long layoff like Valenzuela, you know how to wrestle, you know how to grapple, you know how to stand up and strike, but you just need that little bit of time off for everything to just come together perfectly. And I think he's got it. I think he's got the ability to press the fight, and I think he's going to be able to put it together. That's just how I felt watching the video. But Oliveira looked very impressive as well. Very strong, very powerful, solid strikes. Um, yeah, I'm sticking with Valenzuela. I think he's got it.
Yeah, two for Venezuela here as well. I actually wasn't all that impressed with Oliveira. I thought he looked the part. I thought that he has some decent skills, but I think the level of competition and his skill set here is one that's going to be he's going to run into trouble here to me against Venezuela. I think Venezuela hits a little bit harder. I think that he's got a little bit more grit to him. When you watch Oliveira in one of his previous fights, he fought a guy that had coming off a 3-year layoff, and he went the distance with that guy, and he had him, I don't want to say hurt on multiple occasions, but Oliveira kind of walks you down. He just touches, he throws sort of 80% on his shots, but he's not necessarily landing like huge power punches. It's kind of just swarming you with punches and getting you to kind of cover up, and his opponent will kind of swing in the pocket just to kind of get him off of him, and he goes back, he rips to the body, he comes upstairs. But these are, I feel like in these moments, you get guys, somebody like Venezuela, for example, they're going to rip, kind of to the liver, or they're going to come upstairs, and you're just not going to be able to stand there in the pocket with Venezuela. He's going to put you out. He's going to mix in elbows in the clinch. He's going to knee you to the body. He's going to land something big in those sort of finishing sequences where his opponent's covering up. And I just felt like Oliveira wasn't taking it or capitalizing on those moments. And I kind of look at it as more of a volume versus power here. Oliveira has nice footwork. He does do a good job of being able to kind of walk you down and stalk you as an opponent. But I think Venezuela is going to be tough to back up. I think he's going to be the one kind of, on the front foot. And I think that kind of what Carlos said is kind of true here, that I don't necessarily think Oliveira has faced too much adversity, and I think Victor Venezuela is definitely going to give him that adversity. He's also obviously got the grappling chops as well. If he wants to mix in some grappling, that's another weapon to his arsenal. I think Oliveira is more of a guy that likes to sort of throw volume punching and not a whole lot of kicks, whereas Venezuela is going to be able to mix in more weapons, knees, elbows, kicks, and I think, kind of show off more of a versatile skill set here. So combine that with the power and the more natural finishing ability, I think Venezuela is going to be able to get this one done. Not to mention a few extra fights in terms of his experience inside of MMA. I think that's going to show here for Victor Venezuela. 2 picks for Victor Venezuela. And next up, 2 names I'm definitely going to butcher here. We've got, is it Marwan Rahaki? Rahai? How are you pronouncing that one? Taking on Ananis Mulumba, and I'm going to see if Carlos can name those 2 names for me. Who you got in this matchup, Carlos?
I'm gonna go with I'm assuming it's Rahiki. So I'm
Rahiki?
gonna go with Rahiki in this one. He turns his upper body into every strike that he throws. You know what I mean? He loves to pressure, forces his opponents to fight off their back foot. Whereas Malumba is looking to stand and strike just enough, to keep himself safe, keep his opponent at bay just a little bit, and get this fight to the ground as well. And I really don't believe he has the wrestling credentials to be able to get him to the ground. I think that he does look very physically imposing when you watch him fight, but even his takedowns aren't very impressive. He's got to get a lot of trips and sweeps off the cage, and I just feel like the pressure that Rahiki is going to put on him is going to be too much for him to at least get a takedown. Now you can catch Rahiki overextending, but that means you've got to step in and you've got to slip something. And Rahiki's got some pop. He can do some damage, and he's definitely not afraid to come forward. I don't know too much about his takedown defense ability. I mean, I've seen some. It looked pretty decent. He looked competent in being able to stay on his feet, but I just feel that he's going to overwhelm Malumba in this one and probably get this one done.
See, it's good to have Carlos back on the channel. You see how easy he made that? Rahiki, Malumba, just clockwork. It's good to have you back, big fella. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Carlos literally just did my whole entire breakdown for me. I think Malumba, realistically, he loops shots. He's a good athlete, but he's not technical. He tends to muscle positions. The takedowns are muscle. They're not necessarily a whole lot of skill in them. When he does get you down, he's kind of trying to hold you down with brute strength. He does look to get the back and kind of go for the rear naked choke, but I do question the level of competition that he's fought over on the African regional scene. And when you look at Rahiki, I got to say, this is why we have Contender Series, is you find guys like this, and he was actually one of the guys I really enjoyed watching tape on. Rahiki, very fast striker, very long for the division, can switch stances, very, very fast for the division as well. I think there's going to be a big speed discrepancy in a lot of his fights. I'm guessing, I couldn't see his age, but I think the guy's still very, very young and always can improve. Nice counter striking as well. Even when he's not necessarily landing the counter shot, you can see him thinking about, okay, his opponent went here, he's looking to throw this. And he's very measured on the feet. I'm very impressed with his striking. I think he gets the knockout here against Malumba. My only real concern for Rahiki here is that the Australian regional scene isn't necessarily known for being a shark tank either. So comparing the 2 guys' pedigrees in terms of who they fought is kind of, null and void here. I think both guys haven't necessarily fought the best level of competition, but I've seen some nice judo out of Rahiki as well, not necessarily seen a whole lot of wrestling, but when he gets into the clinch, he's implemented some nice trip takedowns and some nice throws, like I mentioned with the judo, and the kid looks pretty decent. I'm happy to see him on Contender Series. I think that he's going to be one to watch if he does get a contract as well, and I think this is not necessarily an ideal stylistic matchup, but I think that he's going to be able to put Malumba out here. I think that he's far too looping and far too reliant on his athleticism and his muscling to get people to the ground here. I think he leaves an opening. I think Rahiki capitalizes in the striking. And that brings us to the co-main event here for Dana White's Contender Series Week 10. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down Juan Diaz taking on Juan Il Con. Juan? Carlos, how do you say that last name? And who do you have in this matchup?
Well, I think it's Juan, but I took Juan Diaz, and Diaz seems to be very well versed in comparison to Juan, in in every aspect of the fight. The only issue is like he doesn't really do any one thing too well, which you know it's MMA. You don't have to be an A+ in everything. You just need to know how to put it all together. Everybody knows that. So I think that'll be enough to get this done. Whereas, you know, Juan, he's got a lot of knockouts, and it's not that he's like this big, powerful striker. He's not the biggest puncher. A lot of times you can just see the power on people as it's coming through, and you don't really see it from him. The only problem is like, well, the only reason he's getting the knockouts is you don't see it coming because his technique is so tight. So the one you don't see coming is one that knock you out. So his technique is so sharp, it's so short. He's getting a lot of cracks at people, and he's putting them out. He's going up against punches, and he's fighting them in the right in the pocket too. So it's like he's pretty good defensively. He's a tough kid. He hangs in the pocket, and he's getting the better of him. Now, Juan doesn't really uncork any shots. He kind of throws everything at about 70, 60%. And it looks like he's looking to set something up, but he never really uncorks it. But sometimes he does, and he has cracked some people in the past. So I know he does have that if he gets in the pocket with Kwan, that he's got the ability to hurt him. I just think he should probably try to take this to the ground if he can. Like, mix the strikes. It's going to be hard to catch Kwan, overextending on strikes because, whatever he does, he advances his whole body forward. So you're not going to catch him off balance. You're going to have to just bait him in, get tight into the waist, and bring him down. And I don't know if Diaz has that ability. I haven't seen it. But if he gets him up against the cage, he could definitely get him down. And I think just to keep the threat of the takedown, keep going for takedowns each round, stay on the feet, mix everything up, and I think he'll have more success than Juan. So I'm going to go with Juan Diaz to get this done.
Yeah, this is probably my least confident fight on this whole entire Contender Series fight card here, but I'm going to go with Rich Homie Kwan to get this one done. I just didn't see enough out of Diaz. I do agree with Carlos, though. If he does mix in a lot of grappling here, sort of heavy wrestling approach, I definitely think he could win this one. Diaz is more of a boxer grappler to me, but I just didn't see enough out of him that made me feel super confident in picking him, to be honest. He's got a nice 1-2. He tends to be a little bit low output. Obviously, 14-1, the guy obviously can get the victory, obviously, regardless of his lack of volume to me, but he doesn't throw a ton of kicks. Obviously, he likes to look to grapple and looks to clinch, but I wasn't really impressed with his wrestling. I think he's one of these guys that he's more of an opportunistic grappler than a guy that's going to look to try to wrestle fuck you for 3 rounds or get on top and dominate you. He needs to fight to be able to get to the ground in this one, I think, for him to have success, because I think on the feet, Juan is going to be a little bit faster, fighting out of one championship. He's a slick striker, very light on his feet. And I just think that the speed and kind of what Carlos said about, it's the one that you don't see that kind of knocks you out. I could see Juan or Kwan playing that sort of counter-striking game here where Diaz comes forward, he makes him be the aggressor and kind of, baits him into a counter shot here. And I just think realistically that the striking speed here of Kwan is going to be enough once he opens up on the feet that he's going to be able to touch Diaz whenever he wants to. He does throw a couple of kicks to the body into the lead calf. At times you'll see as well, he won't necessarily mix in a whole lot of grappling, but I think his speed and his takedown defense is going to be what's going to win him this one. But like I said, I'm not super confident because I do think if this fight hits the mat that Diaz is probably going to have the advantage. And I just question Kwan's ability to kind of get in there and have a gritty fight, whereas I know with Juan Diaz, from what I've seen with him, that he can kind of, go later in fights and be that gritty fighter. You combine that with Contender Series being, you get a contract in the biggest promotion. That toughness might be the thing that wins Diaz that fight, but I'm going to go with Kwan here to get this one done in the co-main event. And that brings us to the main event here for Dana White's Contender Series Week 10. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down this light heavyweight matchup. Carlos, who you got in the main event?
I'm gonna take Freddie Vidal, just based on the fact that number one, I haven't seen a lot of video on Levi Rodriguez. The only thing I've seen, I think, was probably from 3 or 4 years ago, and I think it was a couple amateur fights. Um, from what we saw from Vidal, I don't know if it was because it was short notice, but obviously the gas tank wasn't there, so we had to grit out that victory. He was dead tired, but he can throw a little bit. He can throw some strikes here and there. It's not technical. It swings like a big guy that's learning how to fight. And if it connects, it's going to hurt you. And he doesn't know where it's going to land. He just knows he's throwing it. And that seems to be how he strikes. But he does come from a collegiate background of wrestling, and maybe being able to control Rodriguez on the ground might get that done. Training with Sarah and Ray Longo, his strike is going to get better. He probably has some submissions as well, but he's probably a little heavier on the wrestling, heavy on throwing the kicks and on the boxing aspect of it, not really the kicking. And I think that'll probably be enough. The only thing that gets me is that every fight that Levi's had is finished in the first round, pretty much. I think maybe second was one of them, but um, just like fighting big guys in the regional scene, when you touch them, they just collapse because they're not used to getting hit at all. So maybe that's the case. Maybe he's not as big a puncher. We're going to find out. But I just think that maybe he doesn't have that. But you got two guys at 205. If Levi swings with his eyes closed and just comes windmilling and he clips him, he could put him out. And Vidal could do the same thing. So I think I'm going to go with Vidal because he's got more ways to win. I'm assuming he's got submissions, but I'm going to say he's got more ways to win. Just add in the wrestling, and I think that's going to be the case to one up Rodriguez, unless Rodriguez just blitzes him and has the striking that we haven't seen before. Because I didn't have much on him. He did fight in the LFA. I'm assuming it's the prelims because I couldn't get any video on that, just the main card stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's got to be pretty decent to be in LFA. They're not going to take just anybody. So I'm going to take Vidal. I think he's going to get it done. And I just think he's got more ways to control where this fight takes place.
Yeah, Freddie Vidal fighting so nice, we had to do it twice, right? Coming back for Contender Series the second time, obviously getting that first round submission, third round submission victory in his previous attempt after missing weight. But 4-0 taking on 5-0, and I'm right there with Carlos. It was really difficult to get tape on Rodriguez, and the one fight that I was able to see, he's wearing headgear. It looks like an amateur fight, and you just don't know what you're going to get. So these are the fights that are always tricky to predict, especially when you're sitting there doing tape study for a YouTube channel, trying to break this down and have some sort of insight. Levy Rodriguez could come in here and look like an absolute world beater, six pack, looking like Alex Pereira. Who knows? But the way I look at it is we know what we're getting from Vidal. We know that he's going to mix in the grappling. I've not seen a whole lot of grappling from Rodriguez. It's mostly been the striking. The level of competition's been very poor from both guys. But like Carlos said, Vidal has fought probably the higher level guys at this point. He's kind of been in the octagon on Dana White's Contender Series. He's done the weight cut. He's done the process. There's no sort of jitters there. Obviously, getting the victory and not ending up getting the contract might motivate him here to come out and have a great performance. But I just think that Vidal's going to lean on the wrestling. He's going to get this fight to the ground. And as long as he doesn't get caught early, he's going to be able to wear on Rodriguez. I think he's just going to see this one as a second opportunity that he's going to need to capitalize on. Obviously, Rodriguez could come out here like a completely different fighter that we've seen on tape. But without being able to see it, I can't pick it. So give me Freddie Vidal here to get the victory, ultimately winning in the first round with a takedown and maybe even another rear naked choke. And that's all we have time for here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. And you know what we got to do. Passing it over to Carlos. Is there anything that you want to say to the people? Is it good to be back?
Oh, of course it is, man. It's always fun to talk about the fights. We talk about it all the time. So it's good to be able to do this and get on here and let these guys know what we think of the fights. And same thing in the comment section. You let us know what you think of these fights and if we even know what we're talking about. But Uh, same thing. If you enjoyed the breakdown, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.